Stop. Before you scroll past this, before you check whatever you are going to check next, stop for just a moment and ask yourself one question. Not about the money, not about the date you left or the plan you built or the number you hit. Ask yourself this. When you picture yourself 5 years into retirement, looking back at the transition you're in right now, what is the one thing you wish someone had told you before you started? Not the financial thing, the other thing, the one underneath all the plans you made. This video is for the men who built themselves completely inside a career, military, law enforcement, fire service, any career defined by mission and consequence, and are now standing outside it wondering why the structure they built isn't fixing what's wrong. You have done everything right, and something is still bleeding you dry, and nobody has named it yet. This video is dedicated to you, and to every first sergeant, every retired NCO, every man who has sat in a room that is finally his own and felt, underneath the quiet, that something essential is missing, and he doesn't know what to call it. I'm Ron Vickers, 26 years in the Army, 18 years in county emergency management, retired twice, still figuring out the second one. If what I say today matches something you have been carrying alone, subscribing is your way of telling me it landed. That matters more than any number. And before we go any further, write the name of one person in your life who needs to hear what we're about to get into. Just the name, in the comments. They may need this more than you do. What I'm about to share took me 2 years to understand, but it requires something from you first. A willingness to look honestly at what you actually accounted for when you planned the exit. Because the cost I'm going to name today, you accounted for everything. The number, the date, the plan. What did you forget to account for? You accounted for everything. The number, the date, the plan. What did you forget to account for? Sit with that for a second before I say anything else. Not rhetorically, actually sit with it. Because if you're anything like the men I talk to, at the Veteran Transition Program at Fort Liberty, in the comments on this channel, you have a list. The savings number, the pension, the health care, the house paid off, the things you told yourself you needed before you could leave, and you got them, or you're close. And something is still wrong, or something is about to be wrong and you can feel it coming and you can't name it. That is what this is about, not the money, not the schedule, not the things you've heard 100 times from every retirement channel that exists. The thing underneath those things, the cost nobody puts in the calculator because nobody knows how to measure it until they've already paid it. Let me tell you where I was when I first felt it. Month 4 of the real retirement. The second one, after 18 years in county emergency management, when I left at 62. I had a structure. Wake at 5:30, which the Army had made permanent in my body whether I wanted it or not. Exercise, breakfast with Patty, a block of house projects, a good list, the kind that would keep a man busy for months. Lunch, an afternoon on the Cape Fear River or in the home office. Dinner, bed by 10. I executed this without gaps, without deviation, the way I had executed every operational plan in 26 years of service. And underneath the execution, something was wrong. Not dramatically wrong, I was not falling apart. By every measurable standard, I was doing exactly what I was supposed to do. But there was a hollowness underneath the structure that the structure was not addressing. I kept waiting for it to resolve. Give the plan more time. The plan is solid. Execute the plan. Patty named it in month 7. She said, "You're running a mission where the objective is not being miserable. You're hitting all your metrics and it's not working." I didn't answer her immediately. I thought about it for 3 days. She was right. How many of you have been there? Not the dramatic version, not the retirement that collapsed, but the quieter one. The version where you built the right structure, you're executing it, and something underneath it isn't right and you can't figure out why. How many times have you told yourself you were fine and believed it just long enough to get through the day? That hollowness has a name, and once you can name it, you can address it. You cannot address what you cannot see, and this particular cost is nearly invisible, by design, not by accident, until you are already paying it. Now pay close attention to what I'm about to say, because this cost does not show up on any retirement checklist I've ever seen. I'm Ron, 26 years in the Army, 18 years running emergency management for a county in North Carolina. I've retired twice. The first time was the wrong answer. The second time is the one I'm still figuring out. 2 years in. Here is the mistake I made, not one of the mistakes, the central one. I confuse structure with consequence. Those are two different things. They feel identical when you have both. Inside a military career, you receive structure and consequence simultaneously, continuously, so interwoven that you have no reason to distinguish between them. The structure tells you when to be where and what to do when you get there. The consequence tells you that what you are doing matters, to someone, to something, to an outcome that is real and verifiable and larger than yourself. When you retire and build a schedule, you rebuild the structure. Most of us are good at that. Former military, former first responders. We build schedules, we execute schedules. The schedule is the easy part. What you cannot rebuild by scheduling is consequence. And consequence is what the institution was providing the whole time that you never thought to put on a list. For 26 years, everything I did had consequence outside myself. My soldiers' readiness, the outcomes of the operations I was part of, the junior enlisted who looked to me to know what was actually happening. Every single day, what I was doing mattered to someone other than me. The proof of that mattering arrived daily in concrete, verifiable form. Then I retired, built the schedule, executed the schedule, and the proof stopped arriving. Not the work, the proof. I keep coming back to my hands because they are the clearest memory I have of the moment my body started telling me something before my mind was willing to hear it. Month 2, a Tuesday morning in the home office, the one with the commendations on the wall and the folded flag in its case and the platoon photo from the 3rd deployment. Projects done for the morning. Room quiet. I looked down at my hands and they were still, not resting, not waiting, just still. And I understood that my hands had not been still like that in 44 years. Not once. There had always been something in them, or something next for them. And now, there was nothing. What I felt underneath the quiet was something close to vertigo. The kind you feel at the edge of a very wide open field, when you realize there are no walls telling you which direction to face. That was the body's first report, my body telling me, something you needed is gone. I didn't have language for what it was telling me yet, but the body knew. The body always knows before the language arrives. What I understand now, and could not have understood from inside the career, is this. The military doesn't give you a list of what it's providing. It just provides it. Structure and consequence and belonging and daily proof of mattering. All of it the water you swim in. Invisible precisely because it's total. When you retire, you don't lose the things on a list. You lose the water. And you stand there in the air wondering why you can't breathe. The mistake was treating the hollowness as a structure problem when it was a consequence problem. No amount of disciplined scheduling was going to bring back what the institution had been providing for 44 years. Because consequence isn't something you can schedule. It has to flow from something that matters to someone other than yourself. And building that from scratch, as a civilian, without the institution behind you, is work that most retirement plans don't account for. Because most retirement plans can't see it. But knowing the diagnosis and living it are two different things. The story of the first retirement is the story of what it cost to get the diagnosis wrong. And I got it completely wrong. The first retirement lasted 4 months. I retired from the Army at 44. Pension, paid off house, Patty and 2 kids in middle school. A plan that looked solid from the outside. What I didn't have was any understanding of what the Army had been quietly providing for 26 years. I lasted 4 months before I took the first serious job offer that came through. The Cumberland County Emergency Management Director position. A former officer who knew what I could do and knew the county needed someone who understood operations under pressure. He called. I interviewed. I took the job within the week. Patty said, "I knew you would." Not criticizing, just accurate. What I did not do in those 4 months was ask myself why I was climbing the walls. I treated the discomfort as a signal to return to work. Getting back to work did fix the discomfort. The county job gave me back the consequence. Coordinating disaster response, managing a team, building protocols that people's safety depended on, all of it fed the thing the Army had been feeding for 26 years. The discomfort went away. And because it went away, I never had to understand what caused it. That is the real cost of the first retirement. Not 4 months of discomfort, 18 years of deferred reckoning. Every single thing the Army built in me that needed examination. The inability to justify work that only mattered to myself. The incapacity to be still without assigning the stillness a purpose. The specific dependency on external consequence I had developed over 26 years. All of it went unexamined. I found a way to keep paying the cost by staying employed. The bill just kept accumulating, and it came due in full on the day I left the county job at 62 and discovered that the second retirement was not what the first one had been. The first one was uncomfortable. The second one was the real test. Nobody warned me. I'm telling you now. The county job was not the wrong decision. 18 years in that role, I built the disaster response protocols from nothing, managed the department through 2 major hurricanes, trained a team of 12 I consider among the best work of my life. The decision to take the job was not wrong. The understanding of why I took it, that was wrong. I took it because I couldn't be still. I should have taken it. But understanding why I couldn't be still, that is the thing that would have changed the second retirement. I got the outcome right. I got the lesson completely wrong. Now I sit twice a week at Fort Liberty with recently separated soldiers, and I watch them make the same decision I made. Not the job decision, the diagnostic decision. They feel the discomfort. They treat it as a signal to get busy. They build better schedules. They find projects. Some of them find jobs, and the discomfort goes away. And I watch them defer the same reckoning I deferred. I don't interrupt the process. You can't. But I know what is waiting on the other side of it. A man I sat with 3 weeks ago, infantry, 12 years in, 8 months separated, described something I recognized from the inside. He said, "I feel fine most of the time. Then there's this thing that happens around 2 in the afternoon, like something is supposed to happen at 2 and it doesn't." He had plenty to do. He wasn't describing boredom. He was describing the absence of consequence at the exact hour when, for 12 years, consequence had arrived reliably. His body had been trained to expect it. It wasn't coming. I told him, "That is not a schedule problem. That is the real problem. The schedule problem is the easy one." He looked at me the way people look when something lands that they weren't prepared for. Not surprise. Recognition of something they already knew but hadn't had words for. That look is why Derek, my son, 38, veteran himself, high school history teacher in Raleigh, sat across from me about a year into this retirement and said, "Dad, the thing you keep trying to explain about the transition out of service, other guys need to hear that, not from a therapist, from someone who's been in it. I am not a therapist. I have been in it. That is the only credential that applies here." There is a message on my phone from a first sergeant out of Fort Hood, 11 lines. What it says essentially is this: "I thought it was just me." I keep that message. I have not answered it. I don't know what I would add to it that the channel itself doesn't say more completely, but I think about it often, because that message is the hidden cost written in 11 lines. The belief that the hollowness is yours alone, that the other men are fine, that something is specifically broken in you. That belief is the thing that turns a navigable difficulty into an isolating one. It converts a structural problem into a personal shame, and shame is the enemy of honest examination. It is not just you. It was not just me. It is the predictable and nearly universal experience of anyone who built their complete identity inside a total institution for long enough that the institution's needs and their own needs became indistinguishable. The Army builds you for the Army, completely. When the Army is done with you, what remains is someone extraordinarily good at functioning inside a total institution, who has never once had to practice functioning outside one. That is not a criticism of military service. I would not trade 26 years. It is a factual description of what that service builds and what it doesn't. It builds discipline, the capacity to function under sustained pressure, trust between men that civilian life rarely demands and therefore rarely produces. What it does not build, what it has no reason to build, is the capacity to find sufficient justification for your own work in yourself alone. In the Army, the justification for the work is always external. The mission, the unit, the men beside you. You never have to ask, is this worth doing if no one else will know I did it? Because in 26 years, someone always knew. The consequence was always visible. The proof of mattering always arrived. Then you retire. and you plant a garden or repaint the house or build a schedule and execute it with complete discipline. And at 2 in the afternoon, in the silence of the life that is yours, you ask yourself, even if you'd never say it out loud, you ask, does this matter? Does my presence in this day change an outcome that anyone would notice? For a long time, the answer that comes back is uncertain. That uncertainty is the hidden cost. That is what bleeds you dry, not the adjustment, not the learning curve, the specific and corrosive uncertainty about whether you are sufficient justification for the life you are now living. I want you to hear this next part clearly. The institution didn't build you wrong, it just didn't build you complete. That is not a wound, it is a condition. A specific and addressable condition that has nothing to do with weakness and everything to do with the simple fact that for decades the institution handled a part of your psychological sustenance that you are now going to have to learn to handle yourself. That is hard. It is the hardest retraining I have ever done. Harder than anything the Army asked of me, because the Army always told you what the objective was. This one you have to name for yourself. But it is not a failing, it is a gap. And gaps can be filled once you know where they are. Here is where I am 2 years in. I volunteer twice a week at Fort Liberty. Not as a counselor, I want to be precise about this because the distinction matters to me. Not as a therapist or an advisor. As someone who sits with recently separated soldiers and talks honestly about what the first year looks like. That is all. And that, the specific moment when a man who has been carrying something alone discovers someone else has been carrying the same thing. That is consequence. It is the closest thing to mission I have found in 2 years of retirement. I would not have found it without first being honest about what I was looking for and why. The fishing is not consequence. 2 or 3 mornings a week on the Cape Fear River. I do not love fishing. I fish because it gives the part of my mind that is always looking for the next objective, something just demanding enough to quiet it down. A practice in presence. In being somewhere without needing that somewhere to produce a verifiable outcome. The progress on this is slow. The direction is correct. I am not further than that. Breakfast with Patty most mornings before the day divides. The conversation that has no agenda. The coffee going cold and neither of us minding. That is a form of consequence too. The proof that my presence in this house today matters to the person who has watched both retirements from the closest possible distance and told me the truth about what she saw in both of them. I underestimated that for a long time. I don't underestimate it now. The retraining is slow. I may not be finished with it when I die. I consider that honest and acceptable. You accounted for everything. The number, the date, the plan. What you didn't know to account for is what the institution was quietly providing every single day that money cannot replace and schedules cannot rebuild. The daily, external proof that your presence in the world is changing an outcome that matters. The consequence that arrives so reliably for so long that you never had to think about where it was coming from. You only find out what it was giving you when it stops. That is the hidden cost. Not what retirement takes from you, what it reveals about what you never learned to give yourself. I am grateful you stayed with this, genuinely, not as a thing you say at the end of a video. I know what it costs to sit honestly with this topic. The fact that you're still here tells me something about where you are, and I don't take it lightly. One thing I am asking you to do this week, not a plan, not a strategy, one conversation. The one you have been putting off with someone who matters to you. Not about the finances, the other conversation, the one about what this transition is actually costing and what it is asking of you both. Write the name of that person in the comments, just the name. I read every one. Writing it down is the first move. If what I described today matched something you have been carrying, I'd be glad to have you subscribe. This channel is one honest conversation a week for the men who know exactly what I mean when I say the calendar ran out. Hit the bell so it finds you when it goes up. The conversation we started here has more to it, and I'd rather you not miss the next part. Take care of yourself. The good work doesn't stop because the institution did. It just changes hands, and now it's yours.